Hello and welcome to a gorgeous evening here in Exmoor. I'm making my way to a beach tonight for a bivvy camp right by the sea, and the tide times are just about going to work out for me to be able to pitch up before it goes fully dark and for me to wake up at a reasonable hour before the sea comes in lapping around my feet. The temperatures aren't looking too bad, so I'm going to consider this my last camp of the summer. I've even got some friends here to help. So before I get taken hostage by the apocalypse, I'm going to cover these fairly short 2 miles down to the beach before it gets too dark and too cold, and let's see if we can get this bivvy pitched in a good spot. To explain the tide times I'm working to, high tide tonight is 6:32 p.m, which is about a quarter of an hour ago, and high tide tomorrow morning is 6:55, so I've actually got just over 12 hours where the tide will at least not be at its highest. But of course I need to consider the heights of the tide in between, and what I want to do is get a view of where the tide sits tonight as soon as I can, and that'll give me an idea of just how high the tide will be in the morning when it comes in, which of course dictates my pitching location. Got some more of these gorgeous belted Galloway cattle just grazing and chilling out this evening. Temperatures shouldn't be dropping below about 10 degrees Celsius, and the wind is meant to be really gentle tonight, and no rain is due. I'm not overly familiar with this beach. I've never actually been onto the beach itself, but from what I can gather, it looks as though it shouldn't be too harsh on the bottom of my bivvy bag. But just in case, I've brought the footprint from my Nature Hike Vic 1, which will just give a bit of protection to the bottom of the bivvy, and also more importantly to the bottom of my inflatable sleep mat. Being a stony beach, of course, I won't be able to push my pegs straight down into the ground as you normally would when pitching a tent or a bivvy. So tonight I've brought 2 of my longest stakes, and I've got some additional guy line. So the plan will be to dig a bit of a pit in the beach, set my peg down in that sideways with the guy line connected to the middle of the peg, cover the peg back over again with the stones, and then tension the guy lines off that to secure the bivvy in place. Sunset is just about kicking off now, so I'll cover this last bit of distance, drop down to the beach and see what we find. As I walk towards the sun now and start to descend down this hill down towards the beach, that sun is effectively going to set in quick time, because of course as we lose elevation the sun will disappear over the back of Exmoor there. But what I'm looking out for now is the position of the tide around the beach here now. So I want to see just how high it has risen up, because when high tide comes in at 6:55 tomorrow, it's only going to be 1 centimetre higher than high tide was tonight. So that gives me a bit of a reference point for just how low down on the beach I can position my bivvy bag. Well, the descending is almost finished now, and I can get a really good view of the beach, and this is exactly what I wanted to see. So we've got lots of exposed stone all the way around the back of the beach here still, so the beach doesn't get completely submerged at these tide levels. So just for reference point, high tide was 9.66 meters tonight, and that was round about half an hour ago. So of course the tide will have receded a bit. In fact, I can see the tide line just where all the various sticks and bits of seaweed and whatnot have been washed up, and of course the stones will still be wet where high tide rose to tonight. What I can also see is one fisherman just in here. There are then 2 more further down the coast, and then there's another group of 2 people down here. So I just need to work out the best way of setting my camp up without being too obvious, but also without really disturbing their peace and quiet. I just don't really want to intrude on other people's quiet time in the great outdoors, because of course we all want a bit of quiet time, that's why we come out here. So I don't want to be talking to camera and making them feel like I'm going to bed right behind where they're going to have their sandwiches in half an hour. As you can see, I've made it down to the beach itself now, and what I can see is that it's mainly made up of these great big round pebbles. So of course they're really good for sticking a sleep mat on, because they're not going to puncture through it. While it's not necessarily going to be a lovely flat grass earthy pitch that I'm used to, I think I can make myself quite comfortable on these using the Thermarest Neoware X-Therm. It's 6.4 centimeters thick, and it does take out some of those undulations you get in the ground normally, so hopefully, all being well, I will be able to get myself comfy on here and sleep tonight. There are some people just over this rise, which is where it drops down to the sea, so there's actually a really broad area here where I can stick the bivvy absolutely anywhere really. The world is my oyster right here, I'm not going to be in anyone's way. So I think I'll have a walk around and see where I'd like to put the bivvy for tonight. Okay, well the wind is holding a very constant 10 to 15 miles an hour. And although the beach drops down right next to me here, drops down about 8-10 meters maybe, I think I'll actually stay up on this shelf up here because it gives just a bit more of a view over the sea. And it looks like all the fishermen are staying down on that lower platform, so I should be out of the way up here. The wind seems to be coming in from a very constant sort of northwesterly direction, so I think I'll line the bivvy up so that the wind's blowing pretty much straight at my feet rather than blowing at my head and also inflating the bivvy, which I don't really want. And that means that all I have to do to look out to sea is roll my head to the left while I'm lying down all snuggled up in my sleeping bag. I'll see if I can get this bivvy set up now and secured to the ground. What you can hopefully see is that I've tied a taut line knot in one end of this guy line, so I can now tension this, and that's going to allow me to tighten that down halfway along a tent peg. I can then secure that sideways, buried under a load of rocks. A lot more rocks than that, and then this line can go off. I'll loop that through the bivvy bag loop, tie another taut line knot in there, and then I can tension this so that I have a nice secure fixture and my bivvy bag shouldn't go anywhere. And there you go, a fully tensionable system, and I'll do the same down the head end as well, and I can bury these pegs and get myself set up. Now that's lovely and secure, it's not going anywhere. Time to make another one for the head end. That's the peg end done. Ideally I would like to burn this end back with my cigarette lighter, but the wind's making that a bit difficult tonight, so I'll just leave it as it is. Burning it just means that you melt the fibres in here a bit and then they don't splay open and unravel themselves. So there we go, this is how the head end peg will work. So I'll bury this now, tie it onto the end, and I'm set up. My bivvy's all set up now and my dinner's on the go. So in a sec I'll be tucking into my Wayfarer's chicken tikka and rice, and I've also brought that pasta and sauce I keep bringing with me but not eating. I can hear my water's just about to come to the boil, so I'll quickly show you the bivvy setup, and then I'm going to eat my food and switch off for the night. So you can see I'm anchored down at the head end and the foot end. My sleep mat and sleeping bag are already set up in there. But my water is just about to boil. So I will wrap up filming and I'll see you in the morning. Good morning, it's just coming up to 7:30 AM and it's a lovely sunrise. The sea's really calm now because high tide was only about half an hour ago, and as you can see the high tide hasn't actually come up very high at all, which is what I saw last night as I came down to the beach. There's actually a really high shelf formed on this beach, and that's where I pitched my bivvy last night, so I'm actually looking down maybe about 8 meters onto the top of the sea, so it's not quite the race I imagined it might have been with me racing to pack up in the morning before the tide came lapping around the bottom of my bivvy. The sky was unbelievably clear last night and really dark as well, so I was still able to see satellites moving across the sky about 40 minutes before sunrise, which is quite unusual. Hopefully you're able to see some of that night sky action in my time lapse. I am experimenting with some settings at the moment, so apologies if that didn't quite go to plan. Hopefully I'll have it all ironed out soon. I was nice and warm in the night. I've got my thermal leggings on, a t-shirt, a thin fleece hoodie, and I've got my 4-class down jacket on top with a beanie hat as well. I just got back from Cornwall the night before last after a week away down there, and my Cumulus down jacket got a little bit wet around the bottom during a boating trip. So the 4-class jacket has stood in for duty for now. It's around about 7:30 and it's still just below 10 degrees Celsius, so I'm looking forward to a nice hot porridge, and I think I'll get that on the go now. Well, this isn't a bad place to wake up, is it? I've still got the beach to myself. It's around about 8 AM and I'm feeling nice and warmed up after a bowl of porridge. Like I say, it's not overly cold, but it's also not that warm. Maybe just about 10 degrees Celsius now. The sun hasn't quite hit the beach, but when it does, it'll warm up a lot, I'm sure. So now that there's a bit of daylight, I can show you a bit more about where I've camped. So this is my spot here. Don't worry about the water down here, it's just the remnants of my breakfast. So if I walk over here a little bit, you can see that elevation drop off the top of the beach on this level where I've camped down here, and then there's this lower shelf at the bottom, and judging by the high tide marks and the fact that high tide this morning was 9.67 meters, I would say that the sea probably rises up onto this lower shelf at around about a 10-meter tide height. And that's a really good thing for me to know. It just gives me a reference point because, as I said on the walk down here, I wasn't sure at what point the water would come to for any given tide height. So it's all well and good looking up on the internet and it says high tide, 9.67 meters. Because I don't know this beach well, I don't know what that really means in terms of how much of the beach is left exposed. I know my own local beach very well, so I know where the tide heights sit relative to the base of the dunes, for example. But yeah, you can see where I am here. I am a long way, I mean, more than 5 meters above the sea level, so I didn't have that rush this morning to escape the waves. I'll show you a little bit more about my actual pitch. So, as I tried to show last night in the failing light, I have got my bivvy bag pegged down at the one point that Outdoor Research provide at the foot, and the second point up here at the head end. I did fit a couple of guy lines to this bivvy bag, which I demonstrated on an earlier video, but because these just have little loops at the end, I can't fit one of these pebbles through that loop, so I had just sort of trapped the guy line under a pebble at first, but these pulled free in the night, and it's not a big deal. Someone did actually ask me if you really need a guy line on the Outdoor Research Helium Bivy, and this is basically how it sits when you don't have it guyed out. So all it does, if I just grab these and give them a gentle pull, all it does is just puts a little bit of tension on that top section, so it's not always draped down on the bag. And yeah, you can see there's a bit of a change in angle of the hoop as well when I pull that. It's not really a deal breaker, it's just I think it sits a little bit better when it's guyed out like that, but it's absolutely fine without them. My main problem really is the securing mechanism. So when you've unzipped the hood, this is actually secured up at the minute, so using the little plastic toggles, that is secured up, which I don't think is great. So I normally bring some plastic pegs with me and clip this all the way up so it's right out of the way, but for some reason I took them out of my rucksack a couple of weeks ago and I didn't put them back in, so I think that's the only thing I forgot on this camp. I brought everything else. I brought the rubbish bag, which I almost forget sometimes. But yeah, I've just fastened my meal pouch inside my breakfast tub. That's the easiest way to take that home. Easiest way to ensure that I leave no trace, of course. So in terms of other kit, I've used my Osprey Exos 48 backpack again. And you'll notice a couple of dry bags next to me as well. So one of those has got my clothes in, and one of them I put my electricals in. Dry bags are one of those bits of kit that I just wouldn't be without. They make it really easy to organise things. They allow you to compress everything from clothes to tents, and they also of course keep everything dry, and they also separate wet things from dry things. So to be able to leave my clothes, my electrical gear out exposed overnight like this is great, particularly when I'm right next to the sea, because you of course get a little bit of sea spray and anything else coming off the sea. So I can leave all my gear in the dry bags, safe in the knowledge that the sea and any moisture in the air isn't going to get at whatever's inside those bags. I can see that the sun is slowly making its way around the bay. So we've got Lynmouth, Linton, Porlock over that way. They're all starting to see the sun now. Right now the sun is being blocked out by these hills up above me, but before too long the sun will make its way across the sea and then it'll illuminate this beach. You can actually see round about here, there's the line of the sun at the minute, so it's gradually making its way up towards me, but I'll be long gone by the time the sun gets to where I'm camping, because it's time to get packed up and head back to the car, I would say. My YouTube subscriber count currently stands at 699, so thank you very much to everyone for subscribing and liking and commenting on my videos. It all really helps to motivate me to keep me coming out. I'll continue to try to improve. I have had 2 or 3 comments on some of my older videos to fact check me and tell me I haven't got something quite right. That's absolutely fine, and I'm really sorry that not everything has been perfect. 1 or 2 instances have been down to me just getting my numbers muddled. 1 or 2 instances have been down to information that I've looked up not being 100% correct. I know that my videos are useful to some of you for reference points, for information, for finding out about gear and how it performs, so I'll continue to try to keep everything as accurate as I can. But for now I think it's time to wrap up this video. and I'll see you on the next one.